Before we get to John the Baptist's stern warning to the Pharisees and Sadducees and us in today's gospel, I would like to spend some time reflecting on today's first reading from the prophet Isaiah. Isaiah exercised his ministry in Jerusalem in the late 8th century before Christ, giving political as well as religious advice to kings and leaders and to the people as a whole. Although much of his advice was rejected, Isaiah remained faithful to his prophetic task. Of all the writers in the Hebrew Scriptures, probably no one has shaped the Christian imagination more than Isaiah. His prophecies, especially his servant songs, fashioned the early church's view of Jesus as the suffering servant. And his prophecies, especially, "Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and he shall be called Emmanuel," were taken as prophecies of Jesus' birth. Isaiah is one of the most prominent of Advent figures, and his book is sometimes described as the fifth gospel. Readings from the book of Isaiah are assigned as the first scripture readings for all the 4 Sundays of Advent in the A cycle, and Advent antiphons echo and re-echo Isaiah's words throughout this season. We hear him foretell the ministry of John the Baptist when he says, "A voice cries out in the desert, prepare the way of the Lord," and comfort ye, my people." And the beautiful Advent chant, Rorate Caeli, in English, "Open ye heavens from above, and let the clouds rain down the just one," as well as the popular Advent hymn, "Lo, how a rose ere blooming," are based on Isaiah texts. But it's today's reading from the 11th chapter of Isaiah that contains one of the most popular and well-known images in his writings, and perhaps in the whole Bible. He describes the unexpected harmony between usually adversarial animals. "Then the wolf shall be the guest of the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid. The calf and the young lion shall browse together. The cow and the bear shall be neighbors. Together their young shall rest. The lion shall eat hay like the ox." The scene is reminiscent of the harmony of creation in the Garden of Eden before the fragmentation that resulted from Adam and Eve's sin. Isaiah envisions a peaceful, harmonious world where animals that are normally predator and prey lay down with each other. This vision has been given the name the peaceable kingdom, and it has served for the inspiration of artists for centuries. Perhaps the most famous of these is the early 19th century American painter Edward Hicks. Hicks was a Quaker, and he painted some 62 versions of this scene, calling them all the peaceable kingdom. Here in this scene, he even depicts children resting among the animals, and in the distance, William Penn signing a treaty with the indigenous peoples. A more contemporary depiction of this peaceable kingdom is the 1994 serigraph by the American artist John August Swanson. He includes people carrying candles up the mountain, while Isaiah's little child is in the center, also holding a candle. Someone remarked that the animals in this picture look like they could have stepped off the stage of The Lion King. As I mentioned earlier, this bucolic scene has been shattered by sin. The original sin of our parents Adam and Eve, which represents all of human sinfulness up to this day. Rather than unity and harmony, we live in a world where walls of hatred and fear separate and isolate people from one another. Race, religion, economics, gender identity, politics, and many more factions divide and distance us. Even in the church, Christians today exhibit various divisions that mimic Paul's ancient church when he prayed for the Romans that the God of endurance and encouragement grant you to think in harmony with one another. Our scriptures today are all calling us to a new way of living together in this world. This is the good fruit that John is telling all of us we must produce. There must be justice for all. especially the most afflicted. And the vulnerable little ones must have no fear. 55 years ago, St. Pope Paul VI wrote his encyclical, The Development of Peoples, Populorum Progressio, and he spoke in visionary Isaiah terms. He projected Christian charity into the world in what he called a civilization of love, where there would be, he said, an enlargement of heart to a more brotherly way of living within a true universal human society. Furthermore, he said this: man must meet man, nation meet nation, as brothers and sisters, as children of God. In this mutual understanding and fellowship, in this sacred communion, we must also work to build up the common future of humanity. This is the vision of both St. Paul's, Paul of the first century and Paul of the 20th century. This is the dream of Isaiah 2,800 years ago, and this is the mission Jesus calls us to today. This is the work of building up God's kingdom, God's peaceable kingdom, not just for the lion and the lamb, but for all of God's daughters and sons.